always. But we back at it again. It's Coach Chris Williams with Lead the Way Learning Academy for another phenomenal College Readiness Wednesday session. This week, we got some students joining in with us. Kirsten, she's phenomenal as always, and always just has a great lineup. And I'm so glad that she brought some students to talk about her experience. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Kirsten Fox, who has been our liaison during this series. And we're going to get it going today. Thank you for joining.
Great. Well, thanks for having me again. I love my Wednesday afternoons, or whatever day if people are watching this later. So, I think current college students bring the best energy and some of the best advice for what it's like to actually be college ready. So as part of our college readiness series, we are joined by two Denison University students. And what we're going to do today is really a question and answer. So you can learn a little bit more from them about why they chose to go to college and what they were looking for, and more about their transition into college. So with that, I'm going to kick it off. And with the first question, I'm just going to ask each of them to introduce themselves and talk about maybe where they grew up in their high school, as well as they're both at Denison University, so spoiler alert, maybe their major and what they're involved in, and just a little bit more about themselves. So Farah, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. My name is Farah. I am from Columbus, Ohio. I'm a junior at Denison. I'm a history and sociology double major with a French minor. And what I'm involved in campus is I am a subcommittee leader under the Black Student Union here. I am the president of the African Student Association, and I work for the Anthropology and Sociology Library at school.
Thank you. And Ali?
Hi, I'm Ali. Thank you for having me. I'm an international student at Denison. I'm from Lahore, Pakistan. Currently, I am an English and physics double major. Since I'm a freshman and this is my first semester on campus, I'm just getting to know a lot of organizations here. But I've been to a couple of meetings with the Denisonian, which is the student magazine here, and Outlook, which is the Queer State Alliance. And I've really enjoyed those meetings. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. And Farah, did you say which high school you went to?
I did not. I forgot to say that. I went to, well, it's not my home school. I went to Centennial High School. Okay. So that's up in Northwest Columbus.
I don't know if we have any Centennial High School students, Coach Chris or Anthony, that are participating with Lead the Way.
Centennial High School, we may have one, but we have students from all over the Columbus area, specifically the Franklin County area. So, but if I'm not mistaken, I think we have one or two.
Well, thank you both for joining us. Could you each spend a little bit of time just talking about what factors contributed to your decision in going to college and choosing your college?
So why I wanted to go to college, I mean, it's been something that was instilled to me since I was young by my family. They thought college was, the ticket out, and make sure that I'm a successful person and I'm able to help my community in the best way I can. So that was kind of my prime motivation to go to college. And why I chose Denison. So Denison employed this program called the Denison Columbus Alliance, which Columbus City School students can apply through this early decision application and be awarded a full tuition award. And that's the program I applied to get to Denison. So I was really excited to be a part of the community and have a nice financial aid package to start with.
So yeah, just like Farah, I hope I'm saying your name right. Yeah, I said my family's always been like, you need to do something, and I always wanted to be a scientist, so that's why I went to college. But a lot of factors contributed to me choosing Denison. A lot of my seniors, they went to liberal arts colleges in the US, So that was something that, I found really interesting, and I had multiple interests, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to go into a specific field just yet. So I applied to a couple of colleges. A lot of them were in Ohio, and I ended up selecting Denison because of I talked to a couple of people, and also they gave me a good amount of financial aid. So those two factors were something that contributed to my decision. But yeah, I hope that helps.
Thank you. Could either of you talk about any fears or concerns about college you had before arriving at Denison?
Yeah, I think the biggest fear I had was I knew Denison was a predominantly white institution, and I've been going to schools that were majority Black, and that really reflected my community back at home. So going to Denison, I knew I would face a culture shock, and I did, especially my first year, and kind of the alienation and isolation I felt. Um, However, like through my experiences, I was able to embrace certain things that helped my process in going to college.
Could you tell us a little bit more about some of those things that you faced or that helped you in the process?
Yeah, so there's a lot of student organizations present at Denison, and one of the biggest ones are the Black Student Union. And it really connected me to other people who had similar experiences, who looked like me as well, and really just eased my transition into Denison. You know, like I had a really hard time with my major in the beginning, where I wanted to be a computer science major, and I had a big fallout with that. And it really helped that there were other people in the community in that organization specifically who could relate to that and who could really give me the advice that I needed specifically to aid my situation and give me the support that I needed.
Great. Could either of you talk a little bit more about what your first impressions were when you arrived on campus? And in particular, how was college different from high school or from what you were expecting it to be?
I can go if you want. So the campus is really pretty. I found it really pretty, but that was my impression of the campus. It's very scary saying hi to people. I know. So I had to get over that fear of being the first person to say hi and getting to know everyone you around you. And the biggest difference I found was in the classroom. High school classrooms were super different from what I've seen in college. Um, it's like you're more independent. You won't have anyone pushing you to do work, but there's a lot of support available. Um, so yeah, that was my impression of the classroom. It was a bit difficult, with more workload than I experienced in high school, but it turned out to be just okay.
Farah, I wasn't sure if you had anything to add.
Can you repeat the question again? Sorry.
Sure, now I have to remember what exactly it was. I think it was, what were your first impressions when you arrived on campus? And in particular, how did it differ from what you were expecting or from your high school experience?
Yeah, my first impressions with Denison was um, like it was the first time I was, without any direct supervision. I was mostly around people my age, which was also different as well. And in a lot of ways, it was overwhelming with that experience, with that freedom. It was almost kind of scary at times. So I think that was the biggest difference compared to high school, because high school is so rigid and structured. And you have to follow a set schedule, while you can really make your own schedule here. And while it felt overwhelming then, it's really something you grow into, and I wouldn't trade the experience for anything else.
Great, thank you both. So you both have referenced some of the differences that college, you've encountered since coming to college. I think one thing that's different, and Farah, you referenced this, right? In high school, you've got more of a set schedule. The students that are part of this organization, part of Lead the Way Learning Academy, are used to having our coaches and mentors in place. When you go to college, all of a sudden you likely don't know anybody else or very few people on that campus, maybe for the first time in a while. Could you talk a little bit about some of the offices and resources that just college in general provides to you, that students looking at college, regardless of whether they go to Denison or anywhere else, just what some of those types of experiences and offices might be that can provide support and help?
Denison is really good compared to like other schools, but in this department of everyone really gets started with an academic advisor, and that's one of your biggest support systems at school. They really are personable. The professors are amazing here, and they're really personable, and they really try to connect with you in ways to best mitigate kind of like the stress and attentions that really comes with transitioning into college. It is a difficult process, but they're really there to help you every step along the way. They'll see you at your worst. They'll help you go through all the mistakes that you will experience. But they're really trying to help you and make sure you get the best experience, and you get the most bang for your buck. So having the academic advisors are one of the best support systems here. And that's really concentrated in your first 2 years. Other offices, at least in my experience, was the multicultural office. Back when I was a first year, the director, he interviewed me to go into Denison in the first place. So he was a really big help then. And there's a new director, and she's really involved with the community, and really helps organize events and anything of support for us students here. So the multicultural office has been really instrumental in that help as well.
Ali, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, everyone has a mentor when we come in initially, but as an international student, I had an additional mentor who was also an international student. Then I know you can get an academic advisor. The first year office also offers peer mentors, which you can have for your first years. And then the wellness center has counseling. If you want to talk about anything, I know some friends who have gone there and found it really helpful. But yeah, there are so many options available, and mostly anyone on campus says, most people on campus are really friendly if you want to talk to them.
So this is a two-part question. Could you talk about something that maybe surprised you or has been the most kind of challenging aspect? And then on the flip side, what is your most favorite part of being in college?
I think the most challenging aspect in my experience were the finances associated with college. There's so much language and bureaucracy and institutions that when you're first thrown into it, you don't even know where to begin. And I sympathize with like all high schoolers transitioning into college, especially now. That you really need a guiding hand. And I'm an independent student, so I really didn't have the familial support as well, to kind of guide me through, because I'm also a first generation student. But there are resources, there are people to help you. And I think the biggest thing you have to overcome with college is not being afraid to ask questions. That sounds simple, but a lot of people really go into this kind of mentality that you have to figure it out on your own, and that's not true. There's so many people here that if you just simply email them or text them or call them, they're here to serve you and work for you. And if you get into that mentality, it will really help you in that aspect. But finances in the financial aid office has been a pretty stressful point, especially going to a private school, things are really expensive here. So even after all scholarships and grants, you kind of like have to iron stuff out and make sure you're advocating for yourself in the end. And what was the second part again? Sorry.
I may actually come back to that one. So the second part was going to be about one of your favorite parts of college, but now that you started, I'm going to actually pause on that and come back and just ask a little bit more about the finances. And one, I love that you mentioned to ask questions. And I think that's something we've said in many of these sessions. And I know I give that advice frequently as, right, the worst that can happen is somebody really doesn't answer the question. But people that work at universities and at colleges want to help. Right. And so often you don't necessarily know where to go or what to ask, but just start asking the questions and ask, well, who should I talk to? Or where can I be connected? And I think you're absolutely right. Just keep asking those questions as much as possible. You don't have to figure it out all alone. And do you happen to have, or do either of you happen to have a part-time job on campus? Could you talk a little bit about how kind of that works and how you balance work with a job? Because, you know, many students have to go to college, and to your point, the finances are real. And so getting a job is also something that's important.
Right now I am in RA. Denison calls us a CA or a community advisor, but that's my principal job on campus. And there's a lot of like campus jobs that are everywhere, like in departments and libraries for professors as well. And even though the pay is not so great, it's $9.25 an hour. There's a lot of like opportunities that it would be very hard to miss if you're not reaching out and making sure that you'll find those jobs that you need.
Great, thank you. And Ali, I'm not sure if you want to kind of go back to the first part of the question as to what maybe surprised you and was one of the most challenging aspects of transitioning to college for you and how you overcame that.
Yeah, kind of a similar answer, that the paperwork was not something that I had experienced before. There was a lot to manage. But that was a learning experience for me because I did make a lot of mistakes, but there were usually people who helped me out. And the academics, again, were something that I struggled with a little in the first semester. But the professors are usually very helpful. They can direct you to a lot of resources if you just ask them. And even if you don't ask them, they will probably reach out themselves too. So yeah.
And then I'm going to do a follow-up on your question as well, because I think academics is another area. As everybody enters college, we're all coming with different, educational backgrounds and classes and strengths in terms of, academic areas we enjoy the most, we are the strongest at. Have you, or has anyone utilized kind of the academic support services on campus? And would you be able to talk to the high school students a little bit more about kind of what types of academic support do exist on campus?
The two that I know of are the Multilingual Support Office here, and then there's the Academic Resource Center. There's also the Writing Center. So the Writing Center is something that I've utilized very often. So you have a lot of papers to write in college, so you can just go in. You can schedule an appointment beforehand, but oftentimes they do have walk-in. You can just, this semester it's been remote, so you just log in to the Zoom and they will direct you to someone who will read your essay, give you feedback on it, and the feedback is usually very holistic. So that's very helpful. I know my roommate and other friends in my physics class, they were struggling a lot with the physics homework, so they got a tutor from the Academic Resource Center. I think that's something that a lot of students here use. I've not used it personally, but I've heard good things about it. And then the multilingual support is for students who are who do not speak English as their first language. It's not just about writing, but if you are giving class presentations, it's very helpful. And Miss Kelly Tier, who is like the coordinator for it, she's super nice. So yeah.
Thank you both for that. I think, one of the things I want to make sure the high school students watching today or in the future realize, when you go to college, and well, you were both talking about experiences, that were unique to Denison. Those types of offices exist on all college campuses. And so again, it goes back to kind of reaching out and asking where to go. And so whether it's that you need help with, you referenced the wellness center that does, counseling services or medical, assistance, academic support that does tutoring, the writing center that helps with writing. There's usually upper level students that also do tutoring in different types of subject areas, the academic advisors that help you with not only your course selection, but making sure that you're on track. So many different offices just exist. That it's really hard to go to college and not have the support to help you, each step of the process, as long as you're reaching out, asking for that help and taking advantage of it. I think I've seen a lot of students who choose not to take advantage of it. And I just can't encourage people enough to take advantage of the services that are in place and the resources. So the other question that I had asked was if you could talk a little bit about what surprised you or you weren't expecting that ended up being one of the best aspects of your transition to college.
I mentioned this earlier, but I wanted to talk a little more deeply about it, and then that's just like the freedom and kind of the lack of structure you have. College is basically the greatest opportunity you have to really embrace your adulthood in a way that you're given kind of this safe, controlled environment where you kind of can grow into that role and that figure as a much more matured and developed individual. Especially being at Denison, I was able to kind of step away from, my high school self and start to really embrace the idea of kind of controlling my life, not expecting, a structure or schedule from other people, and really embracing that independence that's, critical as you, grow into your 20s and kind of move on with your life after post-graduation. So I feel like it's not only a necessary change, but it's one of the best changes that will happen to you in your life. And once you're on the other side of it, you'll feel as though like, why did I not, conduct my life like this before? For obvious reasons you didn't, but yeah.
Thank you.
So one of the things that surprised me was I was a bit scared about the dorm life, but I ended up getting a smaller dorm. So I was like, oh gosh, I'm not going to meet a lot of new people. I'll not make friends. But that ended up being a really good thing because it's a small community. So I almost know everyone in the dorm. It's like a very helpful support group thingy. I really enjoy it. You can, most time if you go back after your classes, you'll find people sitting in the common room and doing homework. So yeah, that's something that I found really surprising.
Great. Well, I want to see, I know we have between the coaches and some of the current high school students are on the call. I wanted to turn it over and see if anybody else had questions for either of our two college students.
I got a question, and this may sound funny, but I like to eat, and food is very different from being at home and then being on a college campus. Can you speak about just kind of like, the options and what that's kind of like, and maybe, did you know how to cook prior? Did you have to learn how to cook, or did you say, I'm just going to eat what's here on campus?
Yeah, so with Denison, you have meal plans, and Denison has hired like an outside company, Bon Appetit, to kind of manage the meals. And I'll be real, it's not the best. Like the food, it it's food. Um, it helps in some aspects. There's some days where it's just bad. Other days, they have some highlights, but there's only so much you can do when it's a company that's feeding you, and not your family being at home. So there are ample opportunities, especially on campus, where you can go down to the village, downhill, for good food there, the restaurants there, or you can order food. And the area is really familiar with campus. So, stuff like DoorDash, Postmates, they're very accessible. But once you become an upperclassman and start living, in suites and apartments, you have that opportunity to have your own personal kitchen and, start cooking your own food and really have the opportunity to learn that too.
Awesome. Thank you.
I have a question. Um, how was making connections with people on campus? Like, how was it?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it was very easy because I got to know a lot of people through my my advisor, the student that is your mentor. Everyone has a mentor when they come in, and we had a lot of groups, group calls with them. I made a lot of friends there. Then people in my dorm, I got to know them, um, and yeah, you just have to say hi. Recently, I just talked to an upperclassman because I wanted to get a job at the writing center, and they were already, working there. I just sent them a text because even though I did not know them before, and they were very helpful. We had a chat over the coffee, over lunch. They told me about the job and what they do, what skills you need to have. So yeah, it's really easy, but you have to say hi, which can be, a hard thing to do.
Okay, thank you.
And Farah, maybe I'll ask you to expand on kind of how you met people and made friends and connections. And I know, especially now, since you're have been there for, both, we're obviously still in the midst of COVID now. It's ever changing, right? There's going to be some things that don't go back to the way they were, but there's going to be some college experiences that do return to more normalcy, in the next year. So I know you mentioned you're president of African Student Association and involved on campus. Could you talk a little bit more about I assume you made some of your connections through student organizations and how you learned about them and kind of that experience? I know you've got friends.
Yeah. So the way I made connections, I was lucky to be in the program I was, the Denison Columbus Alliance Scholarship. We came in as a cohort essentially from all different parts of Columbus, but we were all familiar with one another the semester prior to our first semester at Denison. So I was lucky to have that kind of like platform, to really connect me to people beforehand. But to other people, to outside Denison organizations, um, yeah, campus organizations, student organizations, especially the multicultural ones, were really formative in kind of allowing that environment for you to connect to other people. So I didn't just go to the Black Student Union or African Student Association. I went to the La Fuerza Latina organization. I went to the Asian Student Union. I went to a whole range of organizations outside of the multicultural umbrella, and really met people of different environments. And really Denison kind of presents you in many different opportunities to meet people and connect with people, like people in your major, people in your classes, um, people in your cohort, and events campus usually holds. So those are just like one of the few examples that you can make connections here.
Yeah, I have a question. How was it adjusting to COVID-19 while being in college?
I think so. Last semester, I kind of we all experienced like the pandemic, like, and just the absolute chaos it was. With Denison, they kind of kicked us out. Um, in a way, like they did their best. Obviously, there was not that much information to work with, and the school, like everybody in the school was scared. We were scared, so not much was happening last in my sophomore year, other than kind of moving to remote. And then junior year, this year, and last semester and this semester is kind of like where the true adjustment had to happen, since Denison is really committed to the idea of having in-person classes. And I really I'm proud that I go to Denison, because it's one of the few schools in the country to manage a successful year while in COVID. And I never felt in danger at all. Like there's only a handful of cases that ever popped up. But adjusting to life here has been difficult. A lot of like student life, normal life, semester events, parties, um, and normal social things have been disrupted in a lot of ways, kind of completely removed from our calendars. Um, and Denison has created measures to kind of like limit social movement. And of course, it's harder to see your friends. Um, but like to kind of embody the message that Denison was really trying to concentrate on this year, was for us to have a successful semester and year during COVID. We all have to work together to make sure that we're being mindful with our practices, and mindful in following the protocols like wearing masks, social distancing. And so it hasn't been an easy transition living an altered life here, but because most Denison students are willing to work with what we have here, things have been better than most, I would say. And we're able to really engage with normal life in the best way we can while still respecting the COVID rules.
Okay, thank you.
It's a great question. Any other questions?
Yes, I do have another question. Do any of your professors hold office hours, or will they meet up with you outside of class, like just in case if you needed something from them, like help with anything?
Yeah, almost all professors do have office hours outside of class. And if you have classes during those times, I know because I have done this, you can email them and they will set a time with you over Zoom. But I also know that a lot of professors have been transitioning to on campus. So you can just take a walk with them, which is really interesting because that's not something that happens in high school. But yeah, you can definitely meet with your professors. Yeah.
Okay, and I think this is my last question. Are your classes like lecture based, or are they discussion based?
So Denison really prides itself with liberal arts, and I guess to explain what liberal arts mean is they're trying to make you a really well-rounded student. So you're not focusing on one area or one subject. Because you're a biology major, you're not just taking biology classes, if that helps it picture it well. So a lot of Denison classes, 100 levels are lecture based usually, but a lot of professors usually in the second half of your first year and your sophomore, junior, and senior year, they're really Socratic based, really discussion heavy, and students are expected to be in charge of the classroom and really mold how they want to be taught the material. So education here is very personable, very malleable, but also in a way where it's trying to meet your needs halfway.
I don't want to cut off the questions. You guys are asking great questions. Anything
think I got-
else? Oh yeah.
I'll ask one more question, and you may have went over it. I may have missed it, but have either of you had any experience with applying for scholarships within your own college? So, right, I know a lot of our students are like, "Yo, scholarships are before we get to college," but in my experience, just working with on the higher ed side, there's also opportunity for scholarships when you do get to college.
The only experience I've had was music classes, music studio classes. They're not they're extra cost, a couple hundred, but the music department offers scholarships and grants to kind of cover the cost for that. So that's been my experience with internal scholarships. But other than that, other than the big scholarship I got coming in, I didn't have much experience with internal scholarships at Denison, because I think it's very department based, and I don't know anything for my departments, or if I missed anything. But yeah.
And I know, just to answer that question a little bit more, and so there definitely are additional scholarships at most institutions. I know Denison and other schools will also provide internship stipends and summer research assistant positions. So for example, and I think, oftentimes you can make more money if you take a summer job somewhere. But as we're also as universities are trying to help provide experiences for students that will then help them kind of post-college, they know that research assistantships and internships don't usually make as much money. So they'll provide additional stipends. So not exactly a scholarship, but kind of, in a similar vein, to be able to help fund students' experiences, to make it financially feasible and worthwhile to do that. Likewise, I don't know if either of you have studied abroad or have looked at studying abroad, but there's also like study abroad scholarships. Obviously study abroad has not been the same since COVID, but a lot of students at Denison study abroad their junior year, and there are different scholarships to help financially support that as well. And usually it's at most institutions, junior year tends to be the big study abroad year. So regardless of where a student might end up. And, one of the nice things, and I know we haven't talked much about study abroad on our College Readiness Wednesdays, but oftentimes there are summer programs, short-term programs. Sometimes they'll just be like during, winter break, in international experience, as well as full semester or full year. So there's oftentimes lots of opportunity to get travel experience and international experience, and get some of that funded through scholarships as well.
I have a question. What's some great mental tips for a person that's going into college, leaving from high school? Like, what's some great mental tips to prepare to go to college? To look out for, or to, just to be prepared to see or go through.
One advice I would give, and I've had kind of bad experience with this, but leaving behind what you think college should be, especially from a high school standpoint, and really embracing the change that you need to go through as a college student. I cannot count how many times I've really dealt with immature and childish people who really haven't grown out of their high school stage yet, and who don't understand what it means to be an adult. Obviously, there's no one way to be an adult, of course, but um, really maturing and coming into your own is what's paramount, what's important. Um, and another tip would be really centering your health. College can be a lonely time for a lot of people because it may be the first time you're truly independent. And you have to look out for yourself, because if you don't, who will? And when I say health, not just physical bodily health, but also emotional and mental health as well. And really just be mindful of that and making sure you're keeping up with those resources, because college really doesn't matter if you are not putting yourself first. And you need to really make sure you're doing that, and you are advocating for yourself, and you're keeping yourself above waters before you are the students, before you are the leader, before you are anything else in college.
May be a hard act to follow, but Ali, do you have anything to add?
Oh, I'll just second whatever Farah said, because I feel that it's very, very, very true what he's saying. That yeah, college really doesn't matter if you're not prioritizing yourself. And I think you should like go in with whatever you want to do and follow your interests, because a lot of times, a lot of my friends, they they came in with a specific idea of what major they were going to be, what classes they were going to find interesting, and that changes a lot. For me, it changed a lot. You went in, I came in a physics major, but I really liked my writing class and not my physics class that much. So now I'm taking three writing classes, like humanity classes this semester, and only one physics class. So yeah, that can be a big change for a lot of people.
Well, you have both shared a lot of nuggets of great advice and wisdom. I would say wise beyond your years, but I think this also goes to show, just the transition from when you do go to high school to college, and kind of the new perspective that you get. Our students that asked questions today, those were some really great questions as well. So thank you for asking them. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, but DeLeon, that was basically going to be the wrap-up question I was going to ask, with some kind of tips and advice as parting words. And you closed it out for me. So I think that's great. If anyone does have any last minute questions, or if either of our two students have parting words, by all means, please share that now.
I think I have one last question. So does your major require an independent study or capstone project? Like, that's just something I had wanted to know before.
Hey, I got to give you the snaps. That one that blindsided me. I didn't expect you to come with that heat like that. Come on now.
Honestly, you're way better than a lot of college students here, because most people don't even think about that until they're at the second semester of their junior year. But Denison is a school that really prides itself in the independent academic work of its students. So yes, most departments and most majors that I know of do have final independent research projects or capstone projects. Especially if you're in the humanities and social sciences, you're going to do a lot of independent research, either for a semester or a year-long research.
I don't know if this is related to your question, but I'm also first year. But even as a first year, you can apply for summer research opportunities. There are like 3 different programs that I know of. If you're a STEM, you can apply to any subject you want. It does not have to be related to your major, but there are a lot of options. You can apply for a 9-week research program. It can be a collaborative project with other students, or you can do it independently. You just have to prepare a proposal, get a professor to write a recommendation letter, and that's it. And I know I've heard from a lot of my seniors that most students who apply do get it. So that's something that I wanted to share.
Great.
That might be it for today, man. That was some good stuff. So again, I just want to thank you both for coming and sharing your value with our young people. I hope that you remember this experience, right? I hope that we're just not taking from you, but the fact that maybe, these questions maybe spark some other interest while you're on campus. So I hope that it was mutually beneficial. Thank you guys for your time. Thank you, Kirsten, for bringing these 2 phenomenal students to share with our young people. And as y'all know it, we will be back again next Wednesday, 3:30. Check our social media out, Lead Away Learning Academy on YouTube and Facebook. And then you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at LTWLA_Columbus. And I'm always going to plug myself in because I'm just that dope. You can follow me at LTWLA_Chris on Instagram. And we will see you guys next week. Peace.